Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. You got the first show for 2012. We've been at this since 2004. Still doing it like we don't know any better.
We know better.
Well, we know better. So
here we are.
My friend Mike is here, and you got DanK here, and we're here to talk to you about some news stories of cannabis related articles and fight for peace and peace and freedom.
Civil liberties.
Civil liberties, that'd be a concept, yeah. I've often heard that if Thomas Jefferson were alive today, he'd be considered a flaming radical.
Yeah, Nixon would be a liberal as well. So
yeah,
things have changed in my lifetime.
Yeah,
as far
definitely.
As where that pendulum is in politics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're in episode 423, so we've been at it for a while, and we're here to stay. So you're welcome to come down and join the show and help out, or just visit. The first thing we want to talk about was a study that Mike brought to my attention that I either knew about, forgot, or didn't even know about. But anyway, the study shows that medical marijuana laws reduce traffic deaths. And did you want to pick?
Yeah, they've done a few studies. This is the first study ever done specifically to look at traffic fatalities because there's solid data to back up the numbers that they need. But what they determined is that in 13 states and data collected for about a 19-year period, let's see, so that's when the first laws came into effect in California, they've determined that traffic fatalities went down 10%. They've also determined that on average on the 13 states, they've also determined that alcohol consumption has dropped as well by 5%, especially among young people aged between 21 and 29. So there's an old adage that statistics never lie, but liars use statistics. But it's interesting to note here with these numbers is that the University of Colorado did not set out to disprove or lay claim to any of these numbers that you hear being thrown around in the media about how children are going to run rampant, getting high crime rates, traffic fatalities are going to increase, all this rhetoric that you hear all the time from the other side, so to speak, and has just been disproved here by a study by economic professors at 2 universities. So I think it's significant and a good start, but it really does back up some claims that really go back over 20 years of studies that prove that even when people are smoking marijuana, they tend to be more cautious and less risk-taking, as where when you drink, you get a little bit more vigorous and wanting to take chances. So the mindset between the two would tend to I think justify the numbers that you see, so instead of people getting in cars all drunk, people are not getting in their cars because they don't want to take chances. That's not part of their mindset. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's an interesting study. I hope it can be found on the website. I think it's the medical marijuana study and traffic fatalities. It's on the University of Colorado's website at Denver. And if you don't believe me, look it up.
Yeah, I found it by Google. I just typed in medical marijuana Denver and study, and it was like the fifth entry on the Google.
Yeah,
so.
And they do have a direct link to the actual study, so you can read all 46 pages and study the nuance of the reports. Really interesting reading.
Yeah, that's great. And then I can't remember somewhere I think it was England a while back. They did a study and found out that people actually drove better under cannabis.
Yes, yes. They determined that when people are actually getting high, they tried to measure the effects of alcohol, opiate prescription drugs, and cannabis, and they determined that with alcohol and the prescription drugs, you could actually get to a certain point where people could not successfully complete a closed course that they would put the study subjects into, as where the cannabis users, they just would kind of slow down a little bit, but were still able to pass the course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And they tried to bury that study for years, but the National Highway Transportation Safety Board, you can find it there.
Yeah, that was, I remember that was interesting. You didn't find it in the main news.
Oh, no. For some reason, the Newswire didn't pick it up, but you can find it at Reuters or most news outlets, but you won't see it anywhere near a newspaper.
Mainstream,
or on TV except for here.
Right,
in other
right.
shows. So.
You mean Rush Limbaugh? Rush isn't going to talk about
Rush is a little bit more into the pills. I think Rush is his own, I don't know, let's leave Rush alone.
Speaking of pills, they better stay out of North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina is a real interesting place. They passed laws just here recently in the last decade that they wanted to go after the real heavy drugs, the heroin drugs, opiates, pills, and whatnot. So if you're in North Carolina and you get caught with, let's say, a ton of marijuana, you'll go to jail for 23 years. And that's kind of a balanced thing. I mean, a ton's a lot. You can't say that's yours. But if you get caught with a pill bottle about this size, you'll get the same amount of time. And so most of the people that they're actually throwing in jail right now are not the kingpins, the deal makers, the ones that they said that they want to get. They're getting moms and dads and students and anybody else that for whatever reason has got a drug problem. And so they're throwing them in jail for 20 years where we know they're going to get the best of service and treatment for their problem. But our country, once again, will shoot the messenger and be satisfied.
Yeah, I found out not long ago that if you take a prescription and put it in a different container,
yes,
that's you can go to jail for that.
Well, I know of somebody, and you know this person as well, who got in trouble for that very thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, here's a gentleman who is so far from being a criminal that it's not even funny, but yet because he has a severe back problem and has to take different medications, when he travels to go camping, he doesn't take all his medications in all the separate jars. He takes what he needs for the trip. Left early, came back, got pulled over by a cop. Next thing you know, he's having to go to court over this. So he eventually, you know, truth did prevail here. He was able to prove that, hey, I'm just camping. I have legitimate reasons for having these things. But he had to, you know, spend thousands of dollars to get an attorney, spend time in a court of law, and then he also had to worry about how his employer would react to the news that he was being charged. So luckily for him, he's okay.
Yeah.
But it happens more often than not that people are not okay, and it will ruin your life.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just one of those things that you personally even think of and to innocently do it, and then boom, you're in the trap.
Exactly. I mean, this was just a bad application of a law that maybe had, you know, possibilities or maybe a good reason for having it on the books, but they never seem to get carried out in the way that they're intended, because we don't live in a perfect world. You know,
yeah. Yeah, speaking of perfect world, we're getting closer. U.S. prison population is in the first decline since 1972.
That is good news.
Even though we're the highest percentage population of incarcerated people in the world,
Number one.
We're number one. We're losing ground, but we're number one. So Republicans, they'll keep us in the front running.
Well, they want to keep us in that top spot.
That's right. Yeah, it's so moving in the right direction anyway. You know, it's think of the money we're wasting just on drug crimes. What we were saying earlier about 50 federal prison system is what percentage of drug crimes?
It's like 51% of the people in federal prison are there for drug crimes. As where you look at the state prisons, it's about 30%. And the sad thing is, while overall prison population went down, federal incarceration rates, went up about 10%. So it's hard to say what to make of these numbers, but still, 1,600,000 people are behind bars, and over 700,000 people a year get locked up. And out of the federal cases, I don't have the numbers here, but half of those, you know, are for drugs, and probably 2/3 of that is for cannabis.
Well, yeah. In fact, right here it says
the numbers there.
It says drug offenders accounted for 18% of state prison population in 2009, the last year for which the data is available. That's down from 22% in 2001. Violent offenders made up 53% of the state population, prison population. Property offenders accounted for 19%, and public order or other offenders accounted for 9%. I see what you're saying. In the federal prison population, drug offenders made up a whopping 51% of prisoners. Let's see, with public orders, mainly weapons and immigration, accounting for an additional 35%.
And I also see that somewhere between 350,000 and 400,000 people are currently locked up.
Last year. Yeah, overall, somewhere between 350,000
prison time.
We're doing prison time for drug offenses last year, yeah. So Similarly, in its report, Corrections Population in the U.S. in 2010, BGS reported that the number of people under adult incarceration supervision declined 1.3% last year, the second consecutive year of declines. The last few years were the only years to see this figure decline since 1980. So, yeah, it's a little bit of hope. If we could just get some sanity in our drug laws, we could improve this scene quite a bit.
True, but there's still around 7 million people currently attached to the prison system and either locked up or on some type of supervised probation or the like, and that's a very good chunk of the population.
I like to say that the drug war, it's about addiction, but it's not about drug addiction. It's about law enforcement's addiction to the money.
It's getting difficult in these days to decide what is going on. Politically, you hear rhetoric from the White House. Obama, to get in office, he says, I'm going to leave states alone, states' rights. And I know I'm oversimplifying this a little bit here right now, but you look at how things are happening all over in every state that has medical marijuana, Oregon, Washington, California especially, because it's such a large industry down there. And they're going in there and basically threatening landlords. They're going after the money. And then on the other side of their mouth, they're saying, hey, we're going to give these companies exclusive rights to federally grown marijuana so they can try to make up some kind of pill that they can give people or some kind of solve. So on one side they're saying, oh, it's evil, it has no use, has no medicine. And on the other side, the Department of Health and Human Services is saying, hey, study this.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the same time saying, but don't let these veterans be part of this study to help them with their PTSD and other injuries because we don't want them doing that. And the reasons they give you for these, it sounds like it's coming from a 6-year-old. There's no logic in it. They're statements without fact, and they're even hard to understand when you read them in their entirety. I always get kind of cross-eyed when I read government or legal documents as to what the real meaning is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, speaking of veterans, medical marijuana, see, medical study for veterans with trauma faces a hurdle.
Yeah.
They want to do the study but can't get the medicine to study with. And people say, well, the government confiscates tons of it every year. Well, but we can't use that because we don't know how it's been produced, so we can't verify it.
Yeah, so. But they're growing weed in Mississippi at the university. And
that's right. And by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but the quality has improved quite a bit.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Elvie tells us that it's actually pretty good now. It used to be just ditchweed. It wasn't even good enough to cook with, she used to say.
Well, I figured they probably didn't even water it.
Yeah. But she said that for some reason, just lately, it's gotten really, really good.
Well, they're probably letting some students do some intern work ship down on the farm, maybe.
Did you hear about our shipment before last that got lost?
No.
Yeah, she left Florida early. That's where she has it delivered to. And so she had to leave early, so she had a lawyer pick it up and send it to her. Well, he picked it up and sent it, but got 1 digit off on the zip code, and it's never been seen since.
I don't think somebody's going to return that.
I guess not. So she just fled out, I guess, and the government, they just, well, tough, we sent it. So. But anyway, I understand she's going down to get her she goes out this time of year every year to get it. So she's down there getting her medicine again, I guess, now. Or will be. But anyway, yeah, that was interesting that it actually improved, so that's a good sign.
That's a good sign, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, they want to do a study, but then they say they can't get the they
won't allow the medicine
to to do it with. But hopefully that'll change. I think we're winning, but to me, I look at it as like we're taking 3 steps forward and then 2 back. We're getting ahead, but it's
taking far too long than it needs to. I totally agree. I'm hearkened by some of the movements made by the governor of the state that I live in now, Washington, and also with Rhode Island, petitioning the DEA to reschedule cannabis. And this is the first time somebody at this level of government has come out and asked for this type of rescheduling. So hopefully, once again, knock on wood, that the tide seems to be turning in the direction we want it to go in. It's just moving painfully slow. The same governor in Washington, last year there was a Senate bill that was rigorously gone through committee and lots of people put their time and effort into it. When it got to her desk, just shredded it. And so now she hears 6 months later, asking the DEA to reschedule it. And we're kind of scratching our heads, say, well, where were you last June when you looked at this piece of paper for the first time and acted like you didn't understand what we were trying to do, and now sit here and say because we have bad laws, we need to change them, which I agree we do, because the problem now with the medical cannabis is that there is money in medical cannabis. You can't do these type of things without buying certain things. This stuff doesn't just grow on its own. And so Obama's not going after patients, they're going after the providers now. And they're going after, we're using Al Capone laws, so you have, I think, a real confrontation coming unless maybe we can all step back from this confrontational, between cops and growers and just say, hey, this has legitimate use. Let's grow up and actually, look at the real science that's out there about this. There's plenty of that. Cannabis has been used widely for many years. I've smoked for 40, and I have most of my, I'm 55, so I'm a little bit long in the tooth, but at the same time, I don't feel like I've lost anything because of my use of it, because it is not a dangerous drug. And half the stuff you watch, if you watch TV, here, this will help your depression, but to shorten it up, it may kill you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So.
I always like to say, when I'm stoned, I can think better. Of course, then again, maybe I'm just stoned and I think I'm thinking better.
It seems that way. I don't know. But
I look at musicians, they've known for using cannabis for eons, Well, I think it's because it creates creativity.
Well, it can. It can do a lot of things. I think that its use over the thousands of years, the fact that nobody's ever died from it, is just totally ignored. We have laws that are driven by fear and intimidation, not sound science. And we're at the point now where you can't ignore the sound science because they've been able to study people who have used cannabis for 25 years. And one study that I watched, because I also smoke tobacco, I'll be brutally honest here, is that they've determined that if you use tobacco and cannabis, the cannabis helps you with the tobacco use. And every time I go to the doctor, which is every year, I get a flight physical. They listen to my lungs and they seem to be non-pulse, and I always tell them, look, that's great because I've been smoking tobacco and cannabis for most of my adult life. Then they listen again, and they can just kind of shake their heads and they don't know what to tell me. So that just tells me that there's a lot of scare tactics out there, and time has proven this out. And there's thousands of people that have been studied in Canada, in Great Britain, not so much in this country, to determine the effects of long-term use.
Willie Nelson said on 60 Minutes, he says if it hadn't been for cannabis, he wouldn't have been able to quit the drugs that were really causing him problems, alcohol and tobacco.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I know many people up in Washington who have been taking antidepressants or types of drugs like this, and most of the pills that they were taking were not really meant to be taken long-term. They were short-term pills for a different use that also had a side use for anxiety disorders or PTSD, possibly. I think they're just trying to sell pills. But a lot of these pills have had a terrible side effect on people. Stevie Nicks is somebody we all know of. She tried to battle the ghosts in her closet with pills at her doctor's insistence, had trusted people to help her, and it just about killed her. And there's a lot of people out here who have serious medical conditions who for years have taken strong opiates and other drugs that are almost experimental in their use because they're taking long-term and the studies weren't long-term. And so they've stopped their use of these opiates and other drugs, use cannabis exclusively, either tinctures or medibles, and the quality of life is just exponentially increased. I hear this miracle plant all the time, and I kind of laugh a little bit about it, but it really does bear truth that it is.
Yeah, it amazes. It's constantly amazing me, the people that I hear from and tell their story. And our opponents always will come back and say, well, it's anecdotal, which to me is like another way of saying, well, it could be all in your mind. And I always think to myself, well, I'd like to see you say that, tell that patient in their face it may be all in their head. Look out.
That's what we've done in Olympia and in city councils all over the King County area, Pierce County, Thurston County, is have some of these people testify to city councils. These are the people that benefit from this medicine.
Yeah.
And you can see in real life for your own eyes hear their stories, and you can see the results. I mean, there's no denying that. For a lot of illnesses and sicknesses, this stuff works, and it makes their quality of life at least better to the point where they can, have a standard of living that is acceptable. They were living lives that were just totally controlled by the medicines they had to take, the debilitating effects of these medicines, and that made the quality of life almost unbearable. So as a last-ditch resort, they tried the cannabis, not smoking it necessarily, usually eating or tinctures, and they were amazed. People that just thought marijuana was just crazy hippie, they find out that, well, there is more of a history there is to cannabis than what you've been reading just in the last 70 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had people call me. My phone number's on the Normal website for the contact for Eugene chapter of Normal. And I have people call me, want to know where to get a card, or they have the card, don't know where to get the medicine. A lot of the people I've talked to never thought they would ever use marijuana in their lives.
Right.
And later in life, they get some kind of an ailment, and then they end up hearing about marijuana. They try it, and all of a sudden, they're not only using it, but they become advocates.
Yes. You get that kind of a miraculous recovery from a severe illness.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of times they're very nervous. They're very because to them and that's where we're kind of in a weird situation, because it's like pseudo legal. It was illegal, now it's kind of pseudo legal. So now everybody's kind of still nervous and looking around, and it's a weird situation, really.
Well, you can still get locked up.
Yeah.
And if you have a job, which I did at one time, that had a lot of scrutiny attached to it. I used to be a commercial pilot. You have even more of a risk. If you work for the University of Washington or University of Oregon, you got to be careful. I mean, there's that one sheriff down in Arizona who just signed an initiative saying that, hey, we think the drug laws are bad. We think that they possibly should be changed. I think marijuana should be legal. Well, he lost his job. I mean, he's a good cop. We need police. I have no problem with that. But here you have a police officer who's done nothing wrong or done nothing other than to exercise his First Amendment rights to say, hey, yeah, I agree with that. I'm going to put my name next to that. And he loses his job. That's the kind of world we still live in. We got reality shows all over the place, but reality is just something that, continues to amaze me as to the drug laws in this country. Oh,
yeah. And then the other story, the vets confounded by dueling medical pot rules. So
that's the feds again.
Yeah.
You'll lose any kind of federal help if you use cannabis. I went through drug treatment the third time through the feds, and they called, at the end of the day, I was told I had a non-specific cannabis disorder. And as a veteran, that kind of put me in an awkward place because, as a commercial pilot, put me in an awkward place because they've given me a disorder without a cure. Just kind of an open end. What do we do with all these people who go through our drug treatment for cannabis that there's really nothing really wrong with them? They have valid reasons for using it, but they still call it a disorder. If you look it up in a desk guide, it says that you self-medicate, basically. So,
the thing about the veterans, though, their policy has changed to where they are saying now that they, if a veteran is a member of,
has a medical card,
has a medical card in their state, and they won't have any ramifications.
Right.
So,
but that's still only 13 states now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
So there's a lot of places, where veterans, have to just do this, in a closet somewhere because.
And then half the time, it depends on the doctor. Just depends on the doctor.
True. A lot of doctors can't run far and fast enough away when you say medical marijuana, even in a state where it's allowed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So and then we got so many veterans coming back from Afghanistan, Iraq with PTSD, and can't use cannabis legally, except in the state of New Mexico. Did you know that?
No,
it's the only state. It's the only state of the medical marijuana states that has PTSD as a condition for medical marijuana.
Well, kudos to the state of New Mexico.
Yeah. And speaking of New Mexico, former Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico, saying here, is going to seek the Libertarian presidential nomination.
Okay.
And he is quite well known in our circles for being a legalization advocate, which clinched the fact he'll never be president.
Well, that's just
I hate to say that,
reality
but
in America.
Yeah. But anyway, at least he's standing up, and it mentions here in this article, and it's something an activist friend of mine told me a long time ago, even if you don't have a prayer of winning, it still gives you a platform to speak from.
True. And I think that's great. I'm going to be happy to see him in all the debates, because if you look at the GOP contenders, I mean, I kind of scratch my head when I look at these people saying, oh, Obama has got to be really happy. I mean, none of these guys could, carry a room, let alone win a presidential election. So, you look at Ron Paul, and he's ahead in the polls because I think the others are just so, I want to say repugnant, but, somewhere in between there's a good word for them. But leadership does not inspire when looking at this field of GOP candidates.
Yeah,
it's a sad day in America.
Oh,
I have a few friends that live overseas, and they get a good chuckle out of watching these things on the internet.
I'll bet, yeah. And then we got Congress votes to restore the needle exchange funding ban.
I wonder how they snuck that through.
Which kind of tickled me a bit. And you read that, it's almost like doublespeak, They restored the ban, like it restored the program. No, they restored the ban of the program.
Military intelligence.
Yeah.
So, good George Carlin joke, but I think it applies here.
It says 2 years ago this week, after years of advocacy by public health and harm reduction advocates, the long-standing ban on federal funding for needle exchanges was repealed. On Saturday, it was restored as the Senate took the final votes to approve the 2012 federal omnibus spending bill. It was a Democrat-controlled House and Senate that rescinded the ban 2 years ago, and it was House Republicans who were responsible for reinstating it this year. Surprise.
Surprise.
Surprise. So anyway, it's on again. So here we go. Well, so we got about 30 seconds. Tell me what's going on in Washington.
Seattle Hemp Festival will be again the third weekend in August. We hope you're all up here. This is a big year, big election year. With everything going on in the cannabis movement, I think we all need to be busy. We need to contact everybody we can and get the word out. Just stand up until your voice, creaks that speak the truth. Truth will prevail. You bet.
Well, looking forward to that. Mike is a core member steering the Seattle Hemp Fest. So anyway, thanks for coming, Mike. I appreciate being on the show.
Good to see you, Dan.
You bet. We'll talk to you next time, and come on down and say hi.
Peace.
They discovered an elaborate pot growing operation there in the garage. Firefighters say some of those marijuana plants did burn. They also say one person was treated for smoke inhalation.
I inhaled so much smoke.